can we deal with the resistance that is arising? Because resistance will always arise. No matter what is going on in our lives, even if it is great, I just got a promotion, I just got some good news. Well, where is the resistance there? There is still resistance, because the instant something good happens, my mind wants to protect it. My mind wants to save it. Again, it begins to control the outcomes, and the resistance begins. And this resistance is carried underneath all my thoughts, underneath all my desires. My fears are always active. And what we call life is a struggle with this internal fear, is the struggle to flow. So we are asking, just for a minute, can I put down this struggle? Can I abandon this compulsive movement in some direction or the other? Doesn't matter what the direction is, whether I'm for or against something, whether I'm with or without something. Can I let go of all movement? Can I allow everything to happen? Can I allow things to go wrong? What is this insistence on everything going right? The whole process of life is things going wrong. Evolution happens because at the cellular levels, things are going wrong. When genes are copied, there are mistakes, and from those mistakes arise advantages and disadvantages suited to that particular environment, and the organism evolves. Evolution, even at its most basic levels, is things going wrong. So why should everything go right in my life? This is life itself. Can I allow things to happen? Can I let the flow come and take me? Can I surrender? If I can, then I'm aligned with the process of life. And then whatever actions I take, those actions have some meaning because now they are free. And so from this place, we are here to gather information, learn tips and tricks to get over fear, hurt, anger. Is that what we are doing here? Are we here to gather information? Are we here to learn methods and a bulleted list to understand how to get over my hurt and my resentment? Or are we here to do something serious? Because if not, I invite any of you who are looking for those things to disconnect. Because what we are discussing here, as we always do, sometimes is dreadfully serious. because our life is passing us by. And the demand is absolutely urgent that I begin to live because I only get one life. And most of us, it seems, are intent upon wasting it in remembering the past, in holding on to what somebody or the other did to me so many years ago or yesterday. It doesn't make any ounce of difference. I have only one life, and I must make a choice how I want to live it. So we are asking if we can take an inquiry into, understand at its depth, not throw around some psychology concepts, not blame others, not justify what we are experiencing, which is what most popular therapy talk has become online and offline, listing ways in which others have hurt you and blaming them, creating strong boundaries. Yeah, we love that, don't we? And that is what our life has become. So we are asking, what is hurt? Are we interested in asking that question? What is hurt? Feel free to type in the chat. What does it mean to hurt? The word hurt means to attack, to injure, to be violent towards something. So why am I hurt? Right? Bhumika says everyone is hurt and the other person is a narcissist. Right? There could be, but we have to be careful before we come to any conclusion. Haley is 10 steps ahead of everybody. Your image or relationship to yourself is hurt. What is hurt? Hurt is such a common emotion, such a close emotion to everyone. Even an animal is hurt, right? If you scream at your dog or your cat, the dog is going to be hurt. It cowers, goes back. What is hurt? When the ego is hurt, Dimitri says, my ego is hurt. Let's look at it. Is hurt something? Now, what is, let's look at this. Hurt, can you point in your body where you're hurt? Hurt is a memory of negative experience. Sometimes it's a memory, but sometimes I'm hurt in an argument. I'm talking to my friend, or I'm talking to my brother or my sister, and they say something which is hurtful. Or I'm talking to my partner, and my partner says something which is hurtful. Can you point to where you're hurt in your body? Feels like it's here, doesn't it? But is hurt something physical? Or we are talking about emotional hurt? Physically, if somebody pushes me or hits me, and then of course I know where I'm hurt. As a martial artist, if any of you are into martial arts, then you know exactly where you're hurt if you get punched or kicked. But where is the hurt? Our thoughts create hurt. Hurt is psychological, right? Which is there is something within me, something which I'm secure about, something which I know surely exists within me. That thing is hurt. So it's not a physical object, but it's an emotional being, an emotional object which is hurt. What is that emotional object? Something soft within me screams in pain when I'm hurt. What is that? Is that my ego? My self-image. So what is hurt is the way I see myself and my source of security, isn't it? At the deepest levels, what is hurt is my source of security. I had a certain understanding about what our relationship is, but when you say something which violates that understanding, my security is taken away. And the moment my security is taken away, I feel hurt. Sometimes there is direct abuse, which is the same thing. My basic sense of security was taken away, which is emotional. And when my basic sense of emotional security is taken away by you through a word, through a gesture, through an implication, I am immediately hurt, right? And then what is resentment? Resentment is what I feel towards you once you hurt me. Anger and resentment go together. Anger subdued is resentment. Anger may be temporary, but resentment continues for years and years, which is why small disagreements, small fights between couples becomes resentment one person or both people hold towards each other over the years. Same with sibling relationships, same with parental relationships. My parents never understood me, always controlled me, controlled my choices, forced me to do certain things for them, for their image, for social status. What will the people think? Feeling like I've never been seen by my parents. So carrying this is resentment. So hurt becomes anger, becomes resentment. And when resentment comes to a point where it can not be handled, then relationships break down. Then we say, I don't want to see you anymore. I'm done. Mhm. If something, we'll look at that question. It's an important question. Haley, if something doesn't threaten our security, are we still hurt from what happens or what is said? Or do we just move on? If it doesn't hurt me, that brings us to the next point, actually. So that's a good question. If I see somebody being rude to a child, if I see somebody being rude to, let's say, we all love animals, we all love dogs, somebody being rude or hurtful towards a dog, does that make us angry? If you see somebody hitting a dog on the street, would you get angry? Of course, most of us would, right? Is that because we are not the dog? There is no self-image about the dog. But why do we feel angry when we see something wrong happen in society? It threatens the dog's security, and their pain is my pain. Correct? Because I am identified or I understand the idea of morality, the idea of correctness, of what is right. And being right is essential for my security. Not just personally being right, but to see right things happen in the world, to see moral things happen in the world is something which personally is very dear to me. So when somebody does something immoral, it makes me instantly angry. If morality was not something on my radar, okay, if to be nice, to be kind, to be gentle was not something I preferred, then of course somebody beating a dog wouldn't bother me, right? Forget about the dog. There are wars going on. Dimitri knows. He's in Ukraine. He understands what war is. He's fought in the war himself. Do we personally feel pain for wars, or do we just brush it off? Human beings suffering on the other side of the world, do we really care? Do we feel angry? Well, we do, but we can't carry it on. So we must put it aside and go on. Understandable? Otherwise, we cannot even get our basic work done. Cannot follow the news all day long. But do we ever take a minute in the day to seriously ponder the consequences of war, of hurt in the world? If we do, then violence, immoral things in the world begin to affect us. They begin to hurt us too. Which brings us to the next point. Hurt feels personal, doesn't it? We saw in the beginning, what is hurt? Hurt feels personal. Is there anybody here who is hurt because it feels impersonal? course not. As we said, even the idea of somebody going to war, let's say, or somebody being rude to an innocent person, or somebody hurting an animal, that makes me angry because it makes me feel personally affected by it. Correct? Any disagreements here? Hurt certainly feels personal. There are many people in our community who have experienced enormous abuse from other people. People married to the same person for 16, 17 years who are verbally abusive, physically abusive. People abused by adults when they were children, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, all in all ways. People abused by their partners who violated their trust by being disloyal to them. So much hurt is there. And this bothers us because it feels personal, doesn't it? It's about me. They hurt me. How could they do this to me, right? How could they say this to me? And I'm carrying it in my mind. Now watch something interesting. Is hurt personal to you? Or is it not personal to you? I'm not saying it in the sense of why does when hurt feel personal, it also feels like it has only happened to me, Haley says, because it is only happening to you. And that's why it feels personal. That is connect. That's exactly what we are asking. Because it only happens to you, it feels personal, doesn't it? It feels like it's about you. But is hurt about you? I'm not implying that hurt is universal because the whole world is suffering. We are not implying that, which is true, but that's not what we are going towards. Of course, everybody on the planet is hurting. There's no human being alive who has never been hurt, except maybe a small baby just born and was born smiling into this world. That baby is not hurt yet. But is hurt about you? Is hurt personal? Or there is something there which is not quite right because it feels personal because it was done to me, doesn't necessarily make it personal. My hurt is personal to the person who hurt me, isn't it? Because a lot of times, in fact, the majority of times, individuals are going around hurting others, not because they intentionally choose to hurt one person, even if they do. It happens why? Why do I hurt somebody? Correct? Ellie says, when you look deeply, you see it isn't only you feeling what you are feeling. Of course not. I said this in the book, which is now 4 years old now, 3 or 4 years old, which says hurt people hurt others because they don't know how to communicate without hurting, how to communicate their pain is not possible through words. So if my pain cannot be communicated through words, how else do you think I'm going to communicate it? I communicate it through hurting you, don't I? I communicate it through saying and doing things which bring you pain. I communicate it through unconscious actions which imply certain things about you. It is not personal, correct? Your hurt is not personal to you, but it feels so strongly personal, doesn't it? This has to be very closely examined to understand that even though I was hurt by one person, specifically choosing to hurt me in a relationship, whether it's my parent or somebody else, my sibling, uncle, whoever, even if they physically abused you, it feels like one person is abusing the other person. And the person who is abused, person who is hurt, who is injured emotionally, psychologically, feels like this was personal. But is it personal? Or we can look at it and realize I was just in the way. This did happen to me, but it happened to me accidentally. It happened to me because this person I was with, this person I'm associated with, related to, doesn't know how to express their inner pain. And the way they express their inner pain is through hurting other people. This reframing, or not even reframing, but understanding the nature of hurt is essential in learning how to live our lives free of the burden they have put on us. They may have hurt you and you may have become a victim to their hurt, but it is nobody else's responsibility to bring you out, is it? Is it their responsibility to heal your hurt, or have they gone on with their lives? So hurt feels strongly personal. That is the nature of hurt, to make it feel strongly personal. But I have to remind myself that it is not personal. This is not about me. This doesn't say anything about me. My parents fighting constantly in the house. My parents criticizing me growing up. One of my parents, my father, leaving the house for 4 or 5 years at a time and coming back. Happens in some houses. Gone for a few months. This has got nothing to do with me. This has got everything to do with the other person. It is personal to them. It is not personal to me, even though it happened to me. When you begin to realize this, a certain door opens, which you can walk through. It's narrow. It's not very wide. It's a small door. And it opens only for a few minutes, or only for a few instances. And that is a door to forgiveness. Bailey says, we feel responsible for another person's reactions. Exactly. And what we are saying is, we are not responsible for their actions. And their actions do not imply anything about our self-worth, our humanity, our personhood. It doesn't imply anything. Nobody can take away from you what is worth having. I have been whole and I always will remain whole. My entire life. My entire life is a journey to realizing that I have always been complete. And nothing that has ever happened to me can take that away. That realization corrects the wrong impression of hurt being personal. We have to go on a personal quest, personal journeys of awakening, of enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. Because the world has convinced us, the world has put a blanket over our eyes, the world has cast an illusion. Society casts an illusion the moment you're born, that you're not enlightened, that you're afraid, that you're not worth it, that you cannot do what you want to do, that you have problems, that you're not perfect the way you are, that you're not worthy of being loved, you're not intelligent, you're not as good as those kids over there, whoever they are. And so this unlearning process is what we are really going through. So now when I realize my hurt is not personal, what begins to happen? The next question becomes, then why did they do what they do, what they did? Now the question becomes, can I understand what happened to me? And the moment I put this question seriously, can I understand their actions? My anger begins to recede and understanding begins to take its place. My fear begins to take the back seat and my reason begins to work. And when I reason with this continuous understanding that this is not about me, this is about them, and I'm trying to understand why would they do such a thing, that is when we start finding explanations. We start having insights into human behavior, and we start resolving that anger, resolving that hurt. Hurt remains hurt so long as it is not understood. But the minute it is understood, it ceases to hurt you, doesn't it? If you were to walk on the street, on a crowded street, and somebody bumps into you and you fall down, what will be your reaction? Anybody here who will be laughing or happy if somebody pushes you down? What will be your reaction? It's a question. What will happen? If you're walking on a crowded street on Times Square, let's say, and somebody pushes you and you fell down, what will be your reaction? No answers? What will you feel? Anyone? No? You turn to check what happened, correct? But you feel pushed. Somebody pushed you and you fell down. What's the first reaction? And you had an ice cream in your hand, and as you fell, the ice cream fell on you fell on the ice cream, and now you have ice cream on your face and on your clothes. Now what's your reaction? Yeah? Anger, irritation, frustration. Well, after you wipe that ice cream from your face, you ask your friend for a napkin or whatever, you clear your eyes, then you see the person who pushed you was blind. Now what happens to your anger? What happens to your anger? In that instant, what happens to your anger? It's a fairly common example. You feel silly. Exactly. It evaporates. Exactly. It disappears. While you were hurt just 2 seconds ago, it transforms into compassion. Ah, beautiful answer. See? So why can't you see that everybody who has ever hurt you has been blind? Why can't you see that? Can you see it? That everyone who ever hurt me has been blind. Correct. But that statement makes no difference, really. Forgive them for what? Forgive them for they do not know what they do, or whatever that statement is. Statement is an intellectual statement. It makes no difference until you actually meditate on it, until you actually feel it. And then, when you have resolved this hurt by questioning, by understanding, for example, somebody was disloyal to me in a relationship, they cheated on me. Why did they do that? I was married to them for 10 years, 15 years. Why did they do such a thing? Once you're able to wade through all the hurt, the anger, the pain, and really, really concentrate, this statement is of no use. It's a great statement. It captures the truth. But the reason why it cannot help us is because it takes a great deal of intensity and focus and meditation to sort through your hurt and understand that it is not personal. Now let me examine it. And when I examine it, why did they actually hurt me? Then I begin to see certain things. All throughout their life, they have been controlled by their mother, controlling every single decision right up until adulthood. They have been pressured to let go of things that they wanted. They've been pressured to break up with people they were dating. They have been pressured to leave jobs. They've been pressured to get married. They've been pressured to do this, pressured to do that. And they get married to somebody, me, in this case, in that example. And when they got married to me, they felt further pressure because of certain things I might have done. Yeah. Certain misalignments we had, certain arguments we had, certain ways I pressured them into taking action. And I keep examining why else? Why else did this happen? And further insights reveal themselves. Is that there has never been an understanding of what it means to hurt somebody. They have never had the time to ponder how my actions would affect somebody. Why? Because they were consumed with their own hurt. See, now a picture begins to appear. Now you can chart a course from childhood abuse, childhood neglect, pressure, enormous pressure, going up right up until adulthood, where there is no capacity to think for oneself, no capacity to self-examine, no capacity to create your own security, no capacity to make your own decisions, and a building up of enormous frustration. And then an opportunity presents itself, of course. And there's a mistake that happens, or somebody does something. Now, when I resolve this in my mind, or such an example in my mind, now my mind begins to release it. Okay, now I understand why this happened. Hurt comes from our inability to understand why a certain thing happened. The more gently and carefully we are able to examine, the more we can understand. And the end of understanding is forgiveness. We cannot forgive what we cannot understand. But the instant you do understand, it is forgiven. And this works no matter how harsh the abuse was. There is absolutely nothing that cannot be processed without, if there was proper understanding. There's absolutely nothing that cannot be forgiven if you understand. You can even read in books. Read the book As a Man, not As a Man Thinketh, but Man's Search for Meaning. That is also a beautiful book, by the way, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. But read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This is a person who lost his entire family, his wife, his daughter. Can't remember if it was his son too. We read it many years ago. In the concentration camps in Auschwitz. Survived the torture of the camps, comes out and creates logotherapy, beautiful system of psychotherapy, which is about searching meaning, helping people find their meaning. And no shred of anger in their work. Understanding creates gentle compassion. It never creates anger. People with great understanding are people with the least amount of anger, which is why you never see them take sides. They may stand with one side, but they are not really taking sides, politically speaking, religiously speaking, whatever. Even in politics, I would stand on one side, sure, but I have nothing personally against the other side. Completely understand where they're coming from. Totally. If I had those fears, that's exactly how I would act. I would exactly be prejudiced as them, as blind as them, had I had their life experience. There's no conflict anywhere. It's very clear. You cannot be angry against a world that you have a profound insight into. You just can't. Then it becomes possible to live. Then I can live my life without holding other people accountable, this and that. Why? Yes, now I'll do the bare minimum. If I'm stuck with somebody and they just can't help but look at their own conditioning, they keep hurting me repeatedly. Sure, I have to do certain things. Certain things become right actions, and right actions may involve reducing communication, creating some distance. Sure. But that's not because I'm practicing boundaries. That's a right action that is necessary because I've processed my hurt, my anger. I know that this person hasn't come to the place where they can see things clearly, so I have to withdraw myself. There are therapists, psychologists going around saying, you do not have to forgive to heal. Oh, no, no, no. Making it even more convenient, making it even more. I mean, if you keep stretching that example, you don't have to do anything. Just live your life the way you're living. But just because you can't do something doesn't mean it can't be done. Speaking of them, of course. You have to rationally observe things and look at the principles underlying healing. And the principles underlying healing say that forgiveness greatly assists in healing. It doesn't mean you won't heal if you haven't forgiven. No, you'll start walking the path slowly. You start meditating and journaling. You're already doing great. You don't have to forgive right away. But there has to come a point when the pain falls away. When you surrender, say, okay, it is what it is. Exactly. So you don't have to forgive at all. Forgiveness is not an action. It is absolutely correct. Forgiveness is not an action you take. Forgiveness is a thing that happens. I said this before too. One morning at 6 a.m., it was dark outside, winter, in the middle of winter. I just woke up and realized I had forgiven someone. Enormous release right out of sleep. Subconsciously in the dream, something must have happened. But I just knew this anger, this hurt, this pain I had about somebody's actions, it was all gone. And that doesn't mean you have to compare your journey with somebody else's because your trauma is different, your experience is different. And your rope has knots which can only be untangled in the order in which they were put. So know that it's going to take time, it's a process. But continue working on the path of walking on the path of understanding. And one day, forgiveness may happen. Most resentment and hurt we carry is because of lack of understanding of somebody else's trauma. If you do understand the trauma, the pain the world is in, you won't be angry at anybody. Doesn't mean you allow them. I would stop a dictator or a murderous villain. I would definitely use force to stop them if they're killing children. But I wouldn't be angry at them. Just because I'm not angry at you doesn't mean I allow you to do what you want to do. I still stop you. You need to be stopped if you're hurting other people. Somebody who commits crimes in society, for sure, based on the laws of the society, needs to be put in jail, for instance. But not angrily. Understand? Not with contempt. Well, you are a danger to society, so you have to stay away. Similarly, you are a danger to me, so you may have to stay away. But I understand what's going on. Milcha is asking a beautiful question. If you understand everything, is there such a thing as right or wrong? Beautiful question, of course. Just because I understand why somebody may go on abusing doesn't mean that abuse is right. It is still morally wrong. Morality is a different topic. But we have to understand that morality can be looked at distinctly through the lens of the implications of those actions themselves. Actions are intrinsically, not implications, but actions are intrinsically morally right or wrong. But the question of morality does not arise in the mind, which has no self-awareness. They haven't reached up to the level of even asking that question. But for separate individuals, but for me, who is self-aware and who can look at the world, of course I can look at certain actions and say that is immoral. The simplest parameter I apply is, if everybody were to act this way, would that make a world a better or a worse place for me to be? And if everyone would act this way, which is beating up animals, would act this way, which is cheating on their partners, would act this way, which is talking behind somebody's back, would act this way, which is psychologically, emotionally torturing, abusing other people. If everybody in the world acts this way, what kind of a world would that create? It would create a horrible world, wouldn't it? And so that means that action is immoral. I don't even have to carry out the action to see what the outcome is going to be. Or maybe something nice happens. No, the action in itself is immoral. You can also have immoral actions leading to good results. But those actions are still immoral. Like, for example, the Nazis tried that, right? Trying to create genetically superior humans or whatever. And in their minds, yes, it would lead to a great utopian future. People with strong genetics would be there. But those actions would still be morally wrong. So yes, you can understand things and still have them be wrong actions. In fact, most Disney villains have motivations of greater good. Like the Avengers movies, if you have seen them. This guy called Thanos, his character, he wants to remove 50% of life in the whole universe so that the resources of the universe become enough for everybody. And he does achieve that on many, many planets. He removes half the people and the planet thrives. Well, the end result was beautiful. Was the action moral? No. The action was absolutely immoral. And you can still understand where he comes from. But does that mean you wouldn't stop him? Of course not. You would still stop him. So you can understand where they are coming from. You cannot be angry at them and yet know that their actions are immoral, and also be able to stop them. Is that clear? That makes sense? Or is that confusing still? We are not condoning the actions. Forgiving doesn't mean you let your abuser continue. Of course not. That would be a gross misrepresentation. It means you're compassionate spontaneously, not trying to be compassionate. Again, trying to be compassionate is no compassion. But you're compassionate because you understand. And from there, sometimes you can take stern actions. And those actions also are correct. This is where I'll stop today.